was the timing.
So he
I guess
told you, I'm sorry, he told you while you were driving to the airport before the event.
Not literally,
Yeah,
but yeah,
but
it was. I believe we stopped working together on a Thursday, and we were flying out on Saturday.
that was,
So it was like that was a lot to take in. You know what though? It did, like, I was so, even though I wasn't necessarily that prepared, I went and I skated really well because I was like, you don't think I can do this? Watch me. So I think in a way it helped me get through that competition. But again, like the timing was really poor, and had it happened in August or even September, I would have been fine with it because we hadn't been working that well together. And I did feel like I had been replaced, and I would have been much happier working with someone else at that point.
I guess one thing that we were wondering is that, you really told ESPN that you were fired by Frank, and he kind of didn't indicate that as much. I think oftentimes when people split, there's a sense of, oh, we part as great friends and we have a wonderful relationship. But you really told ESPN how it was, and we were wondering, why you decided to do that as opposed to going kind of by the party line that we're just switching coaches and everything's fine and it just happens sometimes.
You know what? I think all too often, especially within US figure skating, everyone wants to sugarcoat everything, and everything is all like everyone has their rose-colored glasses on. Like, I, especially at the time, felt like it was a really shitty thing to do 2 days before competition. I still feel that way. Don't I don't agree with the timing. It was a really, really horrible experience that week in NHK, and basically the only people who knew about it were obviously my family and Frank and Audrey. So it was, we would go down and we'd be sitting down and eating, and it was like, I'm like, please, someone shoot me in the face. This is like so painful and so uncomfortable. But everyone tries to be so PC, and so like when you're in a very high pressure situation and there's a lot on the line, shitty things happen. People do things that they probably, looking back a year later, wouldn't have handled things the same way. I have certainly, like, when I fired Carroll, it was the same thing. It was like 2 weeks before Worlds, and I was just over it, and I definitely did not handle that situation in a way that was necessarily respectful or diplomatic. I would have done that differently, but no one ever talks about that, and it's like, get a grip. Everyone is always expected to be so perfect and so pristine and everything, and like behind the scenes, like, come on, it's ugly.
it's
There's
very
politics.
ugly.
There's
I guess
politics. There's backstabbing.
Yeah, there's tears.
People do really horrible things to each other, and
Yeah.
parents say nasty things about other people's children, and like, honestly,
Anytime we
like,
take the
that's
veil
kind
off
of
of
what
it.
makes it interesting for us
Yeah.
as athletes. There is intrigue, there's scandal, it's real life, and like, I think if sort of the outside world, or even like the lower level skaters, saw a little bit more reality, they wouldn't become so disillusioned when they're actually put in that environment.
I guess we were wondering is what part does money and financial percentages take in? I guess what kind of percentage was Frank getting from you? Is it just your earnings? Is it when you tour? And, did he think that he would be getting, more monetary results from someone else at that point? I guess what, role does money play in skating?
I think every, for the most part, I think coaches are very monetarily driven. And so I don't even remember who said it, but one of my coaches, it might have been Lori, it might have been Audrey, I don't remember, but they said, oftentimes coaches get too much of the credit when things go well and not enough blame when things don't. And I think that's very true. But at no point do they not get their cut. I paid Frank a lot of money. All
Yes.
the top coaches charge their kids a lot of money. It's your, hourly time, it's competitions, there's a flat fee, and then you pay a percentage.
Do
And
they get
it's
percentage from shows?
from everything that I ever did in skating that I made a dime off of
While you're
when I
training
was
with
with
them.
him.
Yeah.
he got a cut. He also, it was in the contract, got a cut of everything that I got after he dropped me.
Wow.
So I had a very hard time with that. He knows I had a very hard time with that. I think it's extremely unethical. It was in the contract. I had to sign it. I needed a coach. You know, in June when I signed the contract every year, things were not really going all that poorly.
Mhm.
So, yes, I have a very hard time with that. I don't think it's right. I think it's unethical.
And as we're talking about famous splits, I think one of the things that we were wondering, you trained when you went to Frank at the end of the 2000 season. You were training there with Michelle while she was with Frank as well, and that was just one of the biggest splits I think ever in figure skating. And Michelle is such a acclaimed and really respected athlete. Can you shed any light on what happened during the dissolution of that relationship, and what was it like training with Michelle every day at the start of the 2001-2002 season?
It was really very strange. I think everyone that trained there, I think we were as stunned as Frank. Um, obviously, I didn't pay that much attention to their sort of inner workings, but she was training well. Everything seemed to be fine. Everyone seemed to be happy. And then I didn't even find out, I don't think, from Frank. We had gone to that pre-Olympics media summit in Salt Lake City. So it was like Frank, myself, obviously Michelle, Sasha was there, but you know, a bunch of like sort of the people that had a legitimate chance of making the team.
Mm.
And so we went from there, and then we went straight to what's it called? Skate America in Colorado Springs. My mom was on the flight from LA to Colorado Springs with Danny Kwan, and he's like, "Oh, I have something to tell you." My mom was like, "Oh, okay, wow." So she called me. She's like, "So, have you talked to Frank?" And I was like, "No."
Wow.
So the first day of like official practice at Skate America, everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, this guy is falling. What's going on?" I'm like, I had no idea. It was
Wow.
disgusting. No one in the rink even really talked about it. It was like the giant elephant in the room. No one ever really talked about it. No one really understands why it happened.
To this
What
day, you still don't
instigated it?
know.
No one. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's sort of like the mystery. Like they're still good friends. Like they go to lunch. They respect each other, and I really believe they care about each other very deeply.
Hmm.
Um, it's bizarre. It I still is to this day one of the most bizarre things I've seen in skating, and that's saying a lot.
It is saying a lot.
I guess what was Michelle like as a training mate? You know, Michelle was a larger than life figure, so and she's known as being very consistent. Is she someone who did a million programs like Tara Lipinski, or is that more mental strength that she has? What's she like as a trainer?
Training with Michelle was really awful because she didn't really make mistakes. And like, in June and July when we start running our programs, I'm like, playing the part of the Zamboni, and I'm
Right.
literally like
Me too.
falling and hurting myself during a run through. Where in like mid-July she was doing longs with like six triples. It was
Wow.
like from that standpoint, okay, so she would have like maybe 2 weeks of rough long program run throughs, and then it was like automatic, maybe a step out here, a hand down there. She trained the way she competed. She was very consistent. She was very disciplined. She went out and did the exact same thing every day. She was on the ice at the same time. It was like, and that's something that, especially when I got to Frank, that this sort of became like why I did get better, at least consistency wise, is that everything is regimented. Like you do the same thing every day. So that was like the whole, like when I go to competition, I'm just doing my job. Like
Hmm.
that's how Frank trained us to train. It's like you get on in the morning, you warm up, you do whatever, you do a short program. You get off, you take a break, you get on, you warm up, you do all your jumps, you do a long program, and then you stick around and like do sections, work on spins,
Hmm.
what have you. But like that was our day every day. Like there was no sort of deviating from that. And Michelle, more than anyone, was just disciplined. she just went out, even when she was having a really terrible day, and she would go out and like splatter on the first jump. I never saw her stop her music once.
Yeah.
And I was guilty. I may or may not have stopped a program run through or two, and Frank just loved that, let me tell you.
Yeah.
As Jen, I'm sure you remember.
Yeah, there is no
that,
stop. I think that's
that
smart though. You shouldn't
you know
stop.
what it is? It absolutely is smart. And even as athletes, we know that, but it's like sometimes it's just
Because you
so
want to be
hard to like
perfect. If you miss that
yes,
first jump, it
exactly.
is so
And you
hard.
know once you've missed that first jump, it's not going to be a perfect run
Right.
through, but it's not about that. Like
No.
it's about you can like okay, the first time I landed three quads in competition, I splattered on like a cheated triple flip. Had like I not been forced to get up and keep going, I never would have set that record. You know, like who knows?
One of the
But it
things
stinks and it's not fun. And when you miss that
it's
first jump and you're not going to do a clean line, you're like, oh, I have to do this for 4 more minutes. Like,
right. It is
please,
the
like,
worst feeling to keep
yeah, like
yourself
can a
going.
ceiling tile fall on my head or something? You like almost want to get hurt, so you can be like, at least I'm bleeding. Like maybe if I write this one off, you
Right,
know?
maybe have mercy on me. Let me
Yeah,
start again, get a band-aid. You,
but that's why Michelle was as like even in competition. She would go out and she would warm up and she would do a run through. And like the first time I saw her do a run through at a competition practice, I was like, that's absurd. What is she doing?